The helicopter ride out had been loud, but it was a gentle hum compared to the oceanic sentinel. The moment I stepped onto the deck, the noise hit me like a physical blow, a ceaseless soul-shaking symphony of engines, pumps, and the percussive clang of heavy machinery. It was an island of pure industrial violence screaming defiance at the empty ocean. This was it. 6 months, no turning back. I just had to keep my head down, do the work, and prove I wasn't the screw-up my dad thought I was. But in the middle of the chaos, I caught something else. It was low, beneath the roar of the generators and the shriek of the wind. A deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate up from the very floor plates, coming from the direction of the massive riser pipe that disappeared into the churning, dark water. It wasn't just a hum, it was a note, holding for a few seconds before shifting its pitch almost without me noticing. I leaned over to Frank Miller, the grizzled lead roughneck who'd been assigned to show me the ropes. "You hear that?" I shouted over the noise. "That whistling sound?" He gave me a sideways glance, his face a road map of sun-bleached wrinkles. "Hear what? The rig?" "No, something else. Lower. It's melodic." Frank laughed, a harsh bark of sound. "That's just the deep hum, kid. Happens out here. Pressure, vibrations, plays tricks on your ears. You'll get used to it, or you'll go crazy. One of the two." He slapped my back and moved on, dismissing it completely. I tried to do the same, focusing on the grueling work, but I couldn't shake it. The sound Frank described was just a trick of the ears, random noise. What I heard was structured. It was a fragmented tune, a sequence of 3 or 4 notes that repeated then varied slightly, like a lonely, patient song sung from the crushing blackness thousands of feet below. Later that night, exhausted in my narrow bunk, the rig's vibrations were a constant tremor through the mattress. I closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep, to find some quiet. And then I heard it again. The noise of the rig had faded to a distant drone, but the melody was suddenly perfectly clear, impossibly pure. It wasn't coming through the floor or the wall. It was inside my head, a clean, pure whistle pulling me back from the very edge of sleep. That perfect, pure sound held me trapped in my bunk. It wasn't a memory. It was the sound itself, playing on a loop inside my skull. Sleep was impossible. Every time I dozed, the melody sharpened, jolting me awake into wired exhaustion. The next few days blurred into a grinding routine of work and no sleep. The whistle wasn't just in my bunk anymore. It had woven itself into the entire rig. The constant metallic groan of the machinery became its orchestra. I'd stand on the drill floor, deafening noise pressing in, yet I could still hear it. A thin, piercing thread of music soaring above the thunder. The roar of the heating and air vents in my room gained a soft, flute-like counter-melody only I noticed. I'd pick up the radio handset for a crane clearance, and in the static between transmissions, the whistle pulsed, fading and swelling like a signal trying to break through. Rest offered no escape. My sleep filled with suffocating dreams of water. Not frantic drowning, but a slow, cold surrender to crushing darkness. Miles deep, the weight of the ocean felt solid. And I wasn't alone. Something huge, impossibly long and primitive, moved at the edge of my dream vision, a coil of living shadow that blotted out the distant surface light. I'd wake with my heart hammering, the phantom pressure of those depths still squeezing my chest. My work slipped. I was slow, clumsy from fatigue. I'd find myself staring, hypnotized at the riser pipe vanishing into the churning sea, lost in the song, until Frank's sharp yell snapped me back. The crew traded wary looks for open annoyance. One night, Leaning on a lower deck railing, I saw movement in the floodlit sea below. Waves churned white foam around the rig's pontoons. For a split second, I saw something else. A shadow peeled away from the others, moving against the current, fast and purposeful. Unnatural. It vanished instantly, just a dark streak swallowed by the turmoil. A trick of the light. It had to be. I couldn't stand the isolation. I caught Ben Shaw in the mess hall. He was younger, maybe a few years older than me, eyes that hadn't gone dull yet. "Ben," I started, my voice tight. "Do you hear things out here? Or see things? In the water?" He stopped stirring his coffee, giving me a sympathetic look. "Man, deep water gets to you," he said quietly. "First tour's always rough. The pressure, the noise, the crappy sleep. Your brain starts making stuff up as filler. You're not the first new guy I've seen get spooled up by it." He meant to comfort me, meant to say it was normal, just a job hazard. But his explanation just built a final wall around me. Insurmountable. It wasn't my mind. I knew it. His kindness only meant I was alone. I thanked him and walked off, not to my bunk, but to the open walkway at the drill floor's edge. Looking down into the endless blackness, I knew I was done fighting. Done trying to convince them. They couldn't hear it. But I could. And for the first time, instead of trying to shut it out, I just listened. The noise of the rig didn't vanish when I chose to listen, but it changed. It was like tuning a radio, turning a dial in my perception until the static of the generators, the clang of metal, and the roar of the wind faded into a simple, steady hum. Beneath it, the real sound sharpened into focus. The whistle. It was no longer just a haunted fragment. It was a voice. The melodic patterns weren't random. They were structured, repeating in intricate sequences like verses in a song or phrases in some language I was only starting to hear. A few days passed like this, me moving through the motions of my shift, a silent student in a classroom of one. I stopped sleeping much. It didn't feel necessary anymore. I'd be swabbing the drill floor, and my own breath would leave my lips in a low three-note hum I didn't recognize until it had already passed. Later, I'd catch myself tapping a specific skipping rhythm against a railing, the exact tempo of a lilting sequence I'd heard just moments before. The music was getting inside me, using my own body as an instrument. Then the understanding finally came. It wasn't some sudden bolt of revelation. It was a slow, cold dawn. I was near the mud pits, watching the gauges that monitored the drilling fluid's density and flow. A thin, reedy sound I'd heard 1,000 times replayed in my head, and I glanced up. The pressure gauge for the return line was creeping into the yellow caution zone. The sound stuck around in my mind, insistent, until a driller adjusted a setting. The needle dipped back into the green safe zone as the reedy pitch resolved into a soft descending note. That was it. A connection. A cause and an effect sung to me in a language that skipped right over words. I started testing it out. I'd stare at the top drive's torque display, and a deep, powerful chord would thunder inside my head. I'd look at the schematics for the riser tensioners, and a chorus of tangled notes would play out inside my skull, each one lining up perfectly with a different hydraulic line. This language wasn't about feelings or stories, it was pure mechanics, it was a living blueprint of the entire machine. My curiosity became an obsession, pulling my feet along. I found myself drawn again and again to the control room, a glass box overlooking the drill floor. I never went inside, just stood outside, staring at the rows of monitors. My eyes always locked onto one screen, the subsea systems display. It showed a diagram of the wellhead itself, a mess of pipes and valves buried 5 miles deep on the ocean floor. My attention seized on a single symbol marked SOV1, the primary subsea blow-off valve, the emergency safety designed to vent off catastrophic pressure if everything went wrong. The second my eyes found it, the whole symphony in my head cut out. All the other melodies, the songs of the pumps, the pipes, the engines, gone. They were replaced by a single whistle, intricate, impossibly beautiful, more resonant and complex than anything I'd ever heard. And it sang only one thing: the valve. The last piece clicked on a night when the Gulf went dead calm. The sea, usually a churning mess, lay flat and black like polished glass. The quiet was unsettling. I was standing on one of the lower walkways when I saw it, not a flickering shadow. For a solid 2 seconds, a massive shape cut the surface maybe 100 yards out. No splash, just a silent parting of the water. A smooth, perfect curve of something far darker than the night itself. A hole in the world swallowing the rig's light. I couldn't make out a head or a tail, only a section of an impossibly huge coil. The part I could see was bigger than a school bus. It gleamed, slick, wet with something that wasn't water, and then it slid silently back down into the depths. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel scared. Instead, a deep, icy sense of recognition washed over me. The whistle in my head swelled, a long, resonant note that felt like a greeting. I wasn't losing my mind after all. I was being taught. I had just met my professor. After that night, the learning stopped. There was nothing left to decipher. The language was simply part of me now, a second stream of consciousness flowing beneath my own. The whistle was gone, replaced by a silent understanding clearer than any spoken word. It wasn't a voice, it was knowledge, pure and direct, blooming in the empty spaces of my mind. It showed me pictures made of pressure and time, stories of ages spent waiting in the crushing dark. It didn't feel alien, it felt like remembering something I'd always known. This rig, I now understood, was a fragile scab on a deep wound. My purpose here had never been about a paycheck or proving my worth. Those were the shallow reasons of the person I used to be. My true purpose was to be a helper. I wasn't being ordered, I was being invited to join an awakening, an ancient and glorious birth that would fix a cosmic imbalance. The thing below wasn't a monster, it was a prisoner. I was its key. The chance came during a full system pressure test, 3 days after I met my professor. An alarm blared once across the rig, the signal for non-essential crew to clear the drill floor and control room. I watched Frank and Ben head out, their faces tight with concentration. I, however, walked straight toward the control room. I had a different job. Inside, only 2 junior techs remained, staring hard at a bank of monitors to my right. They didn't notice me. They didn't matter. My focus locked onto the far wall where the underwater diagrams glowed. The confusing tangle of hydraulic lines I once struggled with was now a simple map. A soft, warm chord of finality sounded in my head, a feeling of deep thanks and perfect rightness. It settled on one blinking light, SOV1, the main blow-off valve. Open the gate. My steps were steady. My hand didn't shake as I reached past the safety guard for the big red lever. A deep calm washed over me, the purest peace I'd ever known. I finally had a purpose. My whole life, the failures, the debts, the wandering. It had all been a path leading me right here. I wasn't opening a valve to release pressure. I was opening a cage. And from the silent depths in my mind, one last, perfect thought echoed. It didn't sound like a whistle anymore, but like a name. Felt like home. It felt